It's time to hammer.
Now I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down! Somehow it's the best.
Neon Chunks Podcast.
Yum chunks!
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of After the Credits. I am Christopher, here with Sean and Ryan Davis, today to talk about First Man, starring Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy, right? That's her name?
Yeah.
Claire Foy. It's the most recent film from acclaimed director Damien Chazelle, known for La La Land and Whiplash. But before we get into that, how has everyone been doing? Ryan?
I've been doing great, Chris. Thanks for asking. Boy, oh boy, it's been a while since we've seen each other, and we're still
last
not.
Weekend.
Yep. But since that time, let me tell you about all the things I've done. I've watched Maniac. I finished the Maniac. That was a fun show, huh? That was a good one.
Yep, I finished that. Did you watch that, Chris?
Not yet, but I keep hearing about it, and if I keep hearing about it, I may just watch it.
The way you're talking, Chris, reminds me of another show I just finished, BoJack Horseman, which is just one of the best shows ever written by mankind. It's also one of my favorite shows. I'm speaking sort of sarcastically, but I'm being 100% serious. I freaking love that show so much.
How are you being sarcastic?
Yeah, what was the sarcastic?
Just my tone, just to confuse the audience, keep them guessing. I also watched Dragon Prince. Maybe we'll do an episode on that.
Yeah, hey, Vince,
spoiler
we do an
alert.
episode of that.
Is Vince here? Vince,
write in
Vince.
and tell us if we're going to do an episode.
I also saw A Simple Favor, which I freaking loved. I also saw Venom, and I started watching.
He left it silent because we're going to have an episode about that. He doesn't want to spoil the discussion.
Yeah, you can fix that in post. Just, Sean, you say whatever
I'll just
you think
insert
I thought
our
about.
entire Venom episode into that moment.
that pause.
Yeah. I started watching The Haunting of House Hill, or Hill House? I don't know. It's too many H's in the title of the film.
I never did it right. But I am also well into that series.
Yeah, I only started watching that because you both recommended it. And it's torture for me. It's just absolute torture. You know how much I struggle through scary things. It's the worst. But I also love it because it's really well made. So, that's all.
Yeah,
good.
I'm like episode 6. I think there's 10 episodes total. I'm on episode 6 or 7. It's really for people who haven't watched it, it's Conjuring. It's like The Conjuring if it was made into a TV series. It's so long. But
Yeah.
Obviously it's different, but similar vibe and stuff. But yeah, it's really, really, really well done, creepy and spooky, but it's not something I recommend watching by yourself right before you go to bed in your apartment where you live.
Which is what I've been doing.
I was watching an episode today in the middle of the day with lights everywhere, nice lights, and I was still, I commented to Sean while I was watching the episode that I was still very effectively creeped out and kind of cringing at moments in my own little social commentary in my scared state. Just trying to have a voice in the room with me that's not the freaking show.
I have this voice, but usually it's me just going, no. That's what my experience is like.
It's really it's funny because it is just like a kind of classic haunted house stuff. I wouldn't even say it's doing anything revolutionary, but the same way, that's what I mean kind of with Conjuring, is that they just do it so well.
Yeah.
They don't have, there's a few jump scares, but
really?
most of, I think in episode
up to episode 4. I've watched episode 4. I don't think I've seen a single jump scare. I think it's all been very telegraphed, but just so suspenseful that you're just like, ugh.
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on what you classify as a jump scare. I think, to me, a jump scare is just even if you're kind of anticipating it, where they just, loud noise, right in the face, right?
Yeah.
And there's, like I said, there hasn't been a lot. I can maybe think of 2 or 3 in total. But it's less about that, and it's more just I don't know, just every every shot is just like you're anticipating something,
Yeah.
and 90% of the time nothing will even happen, but you're just like,
No.
oh god,
Yeah, like just all the scene. Well, spoiler, but just like that scene where in episode 1 where the main character is just talking to a lady, and it's just the most pleasant conversation. But the whole time I'm like, oh god, oh no. Just the way they film it.
Also, I don't know if this. A friend was telling me about it after I watched a fair amount of the episodes. He was saying that like there's a lot of stuff in the background where there's just like ghosts in windows in random like shots, like that aren't necessarily scary shots or supposed to be scary moments, but just like in lots of backgrounds of shots and just like in the periphery. There's like weird stuff or ghosts and stuff. So like the last episode I've been trying to pay attention. I haven't noticed anything, but that also adds a whole other element like, oh man, what? It's just like,
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
I haven't noticed that.
I mean, Mike Flanagan does such a phenomenal job, and so I was just describing this to Kay, and I was just like, I feel like this is almost like This Is Us, but with like a supernatural horror twist, right? Because it's very much like the horror is kind of like just the setting, but it's very much just a character drama, right? And you got all these characters like coping with this tragedy and stuff like that, and I don't know, it's just
it's just ultimately it's about the family. I think that's also why it's kind of transcends just a normal horror thing or whatever, and why it works as a show too, like, right? Because as most scary things like hold your attention for a movie length, but how am I going to be scared for 10 episodes?
Like it's American Horror Story would be like another thing to
I haven't actually watched that, so I don't know.
I felt like that show, I only watched the first 2 seasons, but I felt like that show had a lot of trouble maintaining that suspense over so many episodes. It just started to fall apart. But
I haven't watched, so I can't say. But I just mean for this anyway, like the good, like just like the character stuff and a lot of the themes and other stuff that the show's about carries it while it's still being scary, and because you care about the characters, and I like all the characters too, and just anyways, good show.
It's also torture because it is so good. I want to watch it. But I get so scared. And I'm like, I don't know if my heart can take it right now. Like, I can't watch 2 episodes. I need to calm down first. But like, I just like there's that mystery, like the mystery, and you're trying to unravel it, and he does such a good job, and I want to know more about it. And I gotta take it. I gotta take it a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Also, I kind of don't want to like watch it too, because I kind of want to let it sink in a little bit. You know what I mean? I don't want to just like binge it and be done with it in 2 days.
Yeah.
Because then it's like over, and I don't have the time to like think about and process and kind of. Whereas if I've been trying to just like at least watch just 1 episode a night, I feel again not great right before going to bed, but it definitely lets me think about it more and just like sink in more for sure, as I can't sleep for another couple hours.
But yeah,
plenty of time to think about this.
As you lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling,
hoping there's not a car up there.
Yep. Well, I don't know. Maybe we could do an episode on that or something. But although we have talked about it a lot already, but
that's true.
Recommend that.
I mean, there's so much to say about it. I mean, because very much each episode has a lot to say about like different forms of coping, and everything like that. So. Yeah.
Anyways, cool.
What about you, Sean? What have you been up to?
Yeah, what have you been up to?
I've obviously also watched that show and Maniac. I watched Dragon Prince as well. I saw Mandy. Have you guys heard of that? This is a little couple weeks ago, but we haven't done
I wanted to see that, but I did not. Was it as good as promised, or as it looked anyway?
I liked it a lot. I think it wasn't quite what I expected. I just watched it on Amazon because it was hard to find playing in theaters, but you can buy it on Amazon or stream it. Anyways, but yeah, it's really good. Like, it's like the first half of the film is really formalistic and just not psychedelic, but lack of a better term, psychedelic, where it's just really, really in your headspace with colors and metaphor, and it's real simple and it's real slow. Like, it's a little bit different than what I expected in that regard. But then it kind of turns into a little bit more what you were expecting based on the trailers, where it's just like hyper violent and it's kind of campy, but also just like really intense. And like there's a scene with two guys sword fighting with chainsaws. Like that actually kind of gives you an idea. At the same time, there's literally like a shot of this woman staring at the camera with like weird kind of melodic, music playing, and she's like staring at the camera for like 3 minutes straight, and that's a shot with just vibrant
like
neon red colors just like inundating your face. I highly recommend. Yeah, it's probably unlike most things you'll see for sure this year in a while. It's really good. I can't I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it to like mom or something, but sorry, I don't know, mom, go watch it if you want, but just be prepared. But yeah, it's an interesting film for sure. I liked it a lot, but I know it's not for everyone. So Nick Cage was good in it though too, so that was kind of cool.
Funny story about that. I was going to watch Mandy. We were showing it at work in our screening room. And that was Thursday night, but it was the Thursday night we were going to record. So instead I went home to record, but then we didn't end up recording. So.
Way to go, unnamed person. Well, you should still watch it. I mean, like I said, it's on Amazon. It's only a couple bucks. So I recommend it for sure.
Cool.
Also, another film that is really relevant came out last year that I watched. A Wrinkle in Time is on Netflix.
I watched that too. Actually,
that movie, did you think it was the worst, as awful as I did? God, that movie was so bad.
It was so bad. However, I will say this: there was one scene, and it didn't belong in the movie, but it was my favorite scene. And who's Reese? Who's it? Is it Reese?
Reese Witherspoon?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, and she says this line. It's funny, it's actually on my little notepad that I'm looking at right now. She says, "Wild nights are my glory." And I was like, oh man, that's like me. I'm her, or something. I don't know. It was a good line. The rest of the movie was garbage. It was so bad.
It was like, I remember when it came out getting bad reviews, but not like awful, just kind of like mediocre and just like overall. And so I was like, whatever. It'll be a fun kids fantasy adventure. And I remember the book and liking the book as a kid.
Yeah, I love the book.
But it was not at all. Even if I followed the plot of the book, it did not capture what the book was.
It did not. I was like, man. At first I thought, man, I must be misremembering the book. Like, it didn't have the same spirit. Or like, I thought this book was about this and not whatever this garbage is.
Yeah, but, like, I don't know if it was my least favorite movie of the year this year, but it might be, even though it came out last year. It was really bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
And yeah, so don't watch that. Go watch Mandy instead.
Yeah. Definitely the same audience group too, so
yes.
A lot of crossover.
And that's it. Let's see. I've seen some other movies, but I can't. Well, El Battle Royale at the Bad Royale Times. Yeah, I saw that. Maybe we'll do a movie or episode about that. I liked it. I saw Simple Favor as well. I like that.
Yeah.
And Venom,
good.
Which my opinions will be withheld for now.
Indeed. Yeah. Oh, one thing before we get to Chris's update, one thing I am looking forward to this month is the new Castlevania season. I think 8 more episodes at the end of this month. That's yummy.
That's like that's like 2 seasons based on the length of the season 1.
Is it a spoiler if I say right now that Alucard is Dracula spelled backwards?
Oh, Chris, you jerk. Oh.
That's a spoiler. It's a grammatical spoiler.
Yeah. And then also the next season of The Patriot is coming out early next month.
Yep.
So 2 great things to inspire my continued existence.
Also, Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out at the end of this month, so some more stuff.
If you have the space on your hard drive for it.
Yeah, you could go out and buy a new external hard drive for your system to install the game on. But
These zingers, you guys. These zingers. You're getting the audience in stitches.
take that, Rockstar, in your 100-hour work weeks.
We'll really roast them. Teach them to do
that. Well, Chris, what about you? What have you been watching, reading, playing, or?
Oh man, I've been doing a little of all
driving.
of that. Driving. So, I mean, I guess a quick thing is, I know you guys. I mean, you guys read this guy because you got me into him. But the new Murakami book came out, and I've started that, and it's pretty good. It's called Killing Commendator. Killing Commendator.
How's it rank in his canon?
Well, I am like 5 chapters in, and already things are getting a little weird. Not super weird, but stuff are definitely off. But no, it's pretty interesting so far. I can't wait to get deeper into it because he always has something to say at the end of the day, and it's usually something good. So.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me. I just finished his first book, which is "Hear the Wind Sing," and then I'm on his second book, which is a sequel to that called "Pinball 1973." I'm almost done with that one.
Nice, man. I honestly say "Hard Boiled Wonderland" and "The End of the World" is my favorite book of all time. I freaking love that book.
All time? Wow.
Yeah.
My favorite Murakami book is Sputnik Sweetheart.
Yep. I know. I've talked to you about the length of it. That's up there. That's a really good book too.
Yeah.
Both of those are up there. I think I like Sputnik Sweetheart a little bit more, but I don't know.
I think one reason
it was the first one I read of his, though. So
yeah, I should maybe go back and read that one since that was mine first as well. I think I like Sputnik because it's concise.
Exactly.
It's what I love about his writing is so like pure and profound, but not pretentious. And I don't know. It's just.
I will say that the book I think best encapsulates his writing is of the ones I've read anyway is. Wind Up Bird Chronicle. I think that is maybe his like it's not his best work.
Murakami
it's not his best work. It's not but I think it like if someone wanted an idea of what his writing is like as a whole, I think if they read that book, they would get the best like idea collectively of what.
Have you guys read 1Q84?
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna say I think that one's a little bit more overindulgent than Wind Up Bird Chronicle.
Yeah, that's true. He kind of goes,
because I remember thinking Wind Up Bird Chronicle was overindulgent, and then I read IQ84. I'm like, no, Wind Up Bird Chronicle was kind of tame in comparison.
Yeah, very much so.
But I mean, I'll keep you guys informed as I get through this. But it's 600 pages long, so it'll be a little bit.
Ooh.
Let's see. I've seen a lot of the same things you guys have. Super jazzed on Hill House. I really want to watch Apostle, which is the new movie from the guy that made Raid, but we talked about that last time, so we won't go into that. I watched A Star Is Born, which was fantastic, and maybe we'll do an episode about that. Bradley Cooper, man. I was not prepared. I think right now I have a hard time seeing him not getting Best Actor.
Ooh, this is interesting because I've heard some word of mouth, and they said pretty much the exact opposite.
What?
Didn't Kevin hate it?
Yeah, he said it was like one of the worst films ever. Although Kevin does mostly hate most things.
I was going to say, wait a second.
One, I think
Isn't Kevin usually the opposite of what reality is?
That's fairly true. Yeah. So,
I mean, to be fair, he legitimately loves Tim and Eric, not in a sarcastic manner.
Well, does anyone like Tim and Eric in a sarcastic manner?
I
think people who like Tim and Eric like Tim and Eric
genuinely. Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
I know, I do. I genuinely like them. But he also hated Boyhood, so I think that's all you need to hear.
But yeah, there's that. Other than that, I've been playing. I've been sucked completely into the Destiny 2 gameplay loop, and I can't stop. Someone please help me.
So how does it, like, everyone says that Destiny 2 Forsaken is the best Destiny yet. Is it? Do you?
So not that that's very hard to claim, because it actually has a pretty solid narrative that they go a little bit more traditional gameplay or game storytelling manner with, like, with FMVs and stuff like that. Yeah, I would say it probably is the best. And, I mean, other than that, the gameplay is the same. They just add on to it, update some things, add more weapons, so on and so forth, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I'm just sucked into doing strikes and dailies and weeklies and getting exotic weapons.
Exotic
Weapons.
Where do they come from?
I like to think weirdly deep orc butts.
That's not the exotic I was thinking of. But, all right.
No, so there's that. As I said before we started recording, I'm getting myself back into Dragon Quest XI now that I am done with Spider-Man for the moment.
Oh yeah, I finished Spider-Man too. We both beat Spider-Man.
Yeah. I will definitely go back to it with the DLC. I want to play the DLC. I probably won't hop right back into it when the DLC comes out. I'll probably hold off and focus on Dragon Quest and Destiny for now.
And yourself.
And myself. Really just reflect on myself.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean that's I got a couple more VR games I want to try out. That Astrobot game, which is getting phenomenal reviews, I still need to try out.
Yep.
Yeah. And then just busy with work. We announced since the last time we recorded, we announced our new game, Lone Echo 2, is coming out.
Yay!
We have a pretty cool 360 trailer. You can watch the video on YouTube or Facebook. Now I'm just upselling. This is dumb. The Oculus Go, and we'll be out on the Oculus Rift soon for viewing pleasure. But yeah, so full steam ahead on that game. And Echo Combat's coming out soon, November 15th. Hopefully, Ryan, you'll play it. And
I'm gonna play it. You can mark my words.
Can Rad sponsor our podcast?
I'll talk to Rue about that. I'll say, hey, Rue, you want to sponsor our podcast? And it'll be like, who are you again? Nah, he knows me. I like to think.
Like you had to reassure the audience, like, no, guys, don't worry, he knows me.
Trust me, the co-owner of the company knows me.
You're a big wig down at the Cracker Factory.
Yeah. Yeah, so, Vince, what are you up to?
Vince, answer the question. Answer the question, Vince.
Vincent. Answer the question. Answer the question, Vince.
Insert line roar now.
Hey
perfect.
guys,
Well, let's get into the movie, eh?
All right,
Yeah,
let's talk about
Adam and
movie
Eve.
number 3, Damien Chazelle. Who wants to go first? Let's just start with brief. Should we start with brief opinions, or should we actually just like break it down, then go into opinions?
What? Break what down?
Kind of like, talk about it more in like a piecemeal fashion and then give opinions, like overall opinions, or should we give our overall opinion first and then break it down? Let's just go with our traditional thing. Ryan, what do you think of this?
No.
What do you think
You're
of
overcomplicating
this
it.
first man? Well,
So-
you knew what was going to happen when you put me as the lead on this one.
I know.
Yeah. I liked it. I did. I think these kinds of movies, like the biopic, historical, blah 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 kind of films, usually don't inspire me or like don't excite me when I'm going into the theater. Partly because I already kind of, I know we went to the moon, right? I know that happened. So not too
Or
exciting there.
did we?
And maybe I didn't really think that. I was like, I don't know. Is Neil Armstrong that interesting of an individual? So it wasn't too I guess, excited to walk into the movie theater, but based on who's in it, and I knew I was walking into a good movie, and that always excites me. So there's that element. That was great. And yeah, this film was not very well known, I don't think. When I was telling people today that I went to see this movie last night, they're like, "What is that movie?" And I was like, "It stars Ryan Gosling." And then they're like, "Oh, well, why don't you leave with that?" I'm like, "Because I think going to the moon is a little more important than the existence of Ryan Gosling." But of course, I'm wrong.
Nope.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you're wrong.
But anyway, so yeah, I did like the film quite a bit. There's a lot of things, just like this elements. Like, okay, we've seen the story probably before in some form or another. So what are they going to do different? I really liked, obviously, the shots. I like that they, especially early on in the film, they restrained themselves from showing any exteriors, which I think they mostly kept throughout the film. And the close shots gave this element of claustrophobia because, well, yeah, you're in this tight little capsule. But I think that was also important because we're trying to get to know this Neil guy, right? And the astronauts and the folks that had to go through this. And that kind of keeps us in their headspace. So that was cool. I like that. Some cool things, this filmmaking wise, I thought were fun to study. Also, the music I thought was awesome because, this guy's first two films were the focal point is music. So I was like, what is he going to do with music in this movie? And it was kind of interesting also. Yeah. And also, I didn't realize that many people died trying to get us to the moon. So that was also interesting. That's all I got.
Sean?
What are we talking about?
We're talking about Hill House again.
That show's great. Yeah, I think I liked it. I think I was maybe a little bit more tempered than. Well, I don't know. I don't think Ryan you didn't sound like you loved it. I think you.
No, I didn't love it. I liked it. I appreciated it maybe more than I liked it.
I think to me it was maybe a little too long. I felt like the third act was great. I think them actually going to the moon was the most obviously the most visually and viscerally kind of exciting, interesting part. But I also just felt like it was where everything, I was aware of what was going on. Whereas in the first hour, it felt like yeah, we're getting to the moon. Here, just put up with this stuff until we get to the moon. And also, I think Ryan Gosling's a great actor and stuff, but I don't know if it was well cast. Although I don't know Neil Armstrong, so maybe that's what he's like. But he came across as really neurotic a little and a peculiar person. And it was like, okay, I guess. It just felt weird. Did anyone else? Do you guys kind of get what I'm saying?
I thought it was a little bit of a miscast. I mean, mostly because when you cast Ryan Gosling, you sort of know what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
And I don't, like you said, I don't know who Neil was, but is that really who he was? That seems odd to me. It seems a little odd.
I mean, maybe it's a clash of my own perceptions of what I think Neil Armstrong is and what he's like. So maybe he is like that. That's sure. But in the film, it comes across as almost like I don't want to say he's on the spectrum or something, but it did kind of almost feel like that a little bit. Do you know what I mean by that, on the spectrum?
Yeah.
When you diagnose children with Asperger's syndrome or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what it kind of felt like. Are they going for that? Is this intentional? Or is it just the way the choices they made as a director / actor? I don't know. It was just kind of weird. Anyways, so sorry. So that was one thing that it was more distraction than a detraction, but it was still there. And then I also I don't know, some of the thematic elements. I don't. It's not a knock against the quality of the film, but it just didn't make me really love it. By which I mean, it was. I don't know. It was kind of a cold film in a lot of ways. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just think thematically, there was a lot of things of just cast aside all of your human connections and don't we just have to have people who are willing to sacrifice things to push humanity forward, and any naysayers, screw them. They're not willing to do what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the more interesting parts of the film, right? Is that the protests and
Yeah.
the voice against it. And I was confused on how I was supposed to feel about that. Am I supposed to be siding with the protesters because, yeah, it is a big waste of money and a bunch of astronauts keep dying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, wait, they kind of have a point. Maybe we shouldn't be going to the moon. But then I'm like, but we went to the freaking moon, and that was rad.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's what everyone remembers about it.
I think to me, like those parts just kind of reinforced my confusion. The stuff that kind of originally kind of introduced me to those kind of feelings, though, is early on with Neil himself, where I never really got a sense of like why he was so set on this. And I'm not saying it wasn't there. I'm just saying I never really picked on. I never really got his real motivation. Like, why was he so obsessed about doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if the ending. Oh, wait, did we advise viewers upon spoilers yet?
Well, we haven't, but
it's too late now.
I hope
all right, viewers, sorry.
We landed on the moon, people.
Yeah. Well, I think the spoiler I was about to mention is at the end of the film with the bracelet thing.
Yeah.
Was that what he was?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why
I
he
gotta
wanted
get to the moon to drop the
Well,
laser.
I don't think that was why he wanted to go to the moon. I think that was his driving focus, right? He was so grief-stricken by that, and then just the compounding of the people he knew, his friends dying in between then and stuff like that, that it just he was just like, I'm going to put my head down, and that's how I'm going to deal with grief, right? He's like, I'm going to accomplish this.
I think that's what I mean, though, is because basically it's like at the beginning of the film, he's all about his daughter and his family, and they're like, look, you have these opportunities. Like, nah, I gotta make sure Karen's all right. That's his daughter's name, and all that. But then when spoilers. When his daughter dies, it frees him up to then. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I mean where I'm talking about the film like has this weird thematic cold tone of just like all of our human connections and these human things in a way tie us down. And once we're able to sever them, we can then really do amazing things.
If you think about Damien Chazelle's films so far,
that's exactly why I'm saying this is because of his other films.
His films are always about what we sacrifice for greatness, right?
And I guess to me, in those other films, I think, especially in Whiplash, but the other films, I was, in La La Land, I was more okay with it. Not okay with it, but I don't know. It was presented in a way that felt less cold and less cynical, I guess. And this, it just kind of felt more, I don't know, for lack of a better term, depressing. Like, it was like, oh, well, that's a bummer. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar themes between the main characters of the different films, what they're willing to sacrifice for greatness, like Chris said. But I think it's just a different perspective, a different human going through that same event, and he just happens to be a different person that...
Yeah, that's true, I suppose. Anyways, well, Chris, we've been talking a lot. What are your thoughts overall?
I mean, I don't know if I would say I loved it. There are things about it that I love. I do say overall I really liked it, though it is my least favorite of his movies so far. But no, I really liked it. I mean, kind of about just the same things you've already said. Like, I was really into the scenes in like the cockpits. Like, they would constantly, like, I think when it was the Apollo 1, and they do it like every time, but I remember specifically in the Apollo 1 one that it was just all the sounds were turned all the way down, right? And you're just listening to all the creaks and all these other like sounds that they would be hearing, and it's just like, oh man, that would be super nerve-wracking because you're just in this giant metal tin can thing that they're going to shoot into space, and you have to listen to all these creakings, just it sitting still here.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think they did an amazing job of just like reinforcing and instilling the sense, at least for me, of, man, how did we ever do anything in space? We should have all died. Like, that's how we get, that thing is going to fall apart. Like, we're so used to modern sci-fi and modern just technology of just like, yeah, okay, you shoot a thing into space and it's all fine. And you look back and like, it was just like guys in tin cans and just like, what everyone should have been dead. There's no, like that. It's crazy that they were shooting people into space in those things.
Yeah, no, I had that exact same feeling. Like it's yeah, you can't understate how like you guys. We have to remind ourselves as humans every like 20 years. We went to the freaking moon. Like we're awesome. We're freaking human beings. We went to the moon. We're awesome. But
I mean the music. I mean, obviously, I really love the ending of the film, but I was actually really engaged in the first 2/3 of the film with like his relationship with people, and I mean, it's Ryan Gosling, and he's really good at what he does. Which is for the most part acting cold and emotionless on screen. But
like, you know what it is? Like, I thought his acting was great, and I thought the character was fine. I think part of it was just like, if it wasn't supposed to be Neil Armstrong, let's say it was just a slightly fictionalized version of our journey to the moon, and he was just Bob Rando new guy, I would have been no issues with it, right? Like, that's just that character. That's fine. But because I already have a perception of Neil Armstrong as a historical figure, that's where it kind of felt weird.
Which is weird. What I found interesting about it, because who's to say that this isn't like the true Neil Armstrong, right?
Yeah,
like,
I know, I agree.
But like, I also really liked Corey Strolls.
Yeah,
that was an unexpected character portrayal too, right? You're like, whoa, yeah. Buzz Aldrin's he's pretty callous.
Well, it's funny too, but that actually fits my perception of Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah,
really, in reality,
because like, he's charismatic and he's like outspoken.
Like, exactly, and like it's funny because in a lot of pop culture stuff, it's if you like Buzz Aldrin guest starred on The Simpsons. He had a voice. He guest starred in 30 Rock. You know what I mean? Like that was Buzz Aldrin, and that fits with that character. He's willing. He's more charming. Like during that press conference was a great moment during that press conference.
Yeah,
and that perfectly encapsulated their two kind of personalities, or at least in the film, what they were going for. And the Buzz fit fit my perception of who Buzz Aldrin was in reality. Whereas Neil Armstrong, I'm like, is he really that standoffish? I didn't know he was. But maybe he was. That's maybe why he's not as, in as much pop culture and willing to do these types of things.
Right.
I don't know.
That's very possible. Yeah.
Yeah, but that I really liked when what was it? His first mission, the docking mission.
Yeah.
Up in space. I forget what it was called. The Gemini.
Yeah. It's funny they all say Gemini.
Oh yeah, it's funny at work we have like code words, and Gemini is a code word. But from now on I'm starting saying Gemini, and everyone's like, "What the heck are you talking about, Gemini?"
But like when they lose control of it and it's spinning, and the camera's just like pointed out the window, and you're just like watching it go completely bonkers and everything like that. I thought that was a fantastic shot. That probably made a lot of people sick.
So one thing. I have a comment on that part, and as it relates to the rest of the film, that, so I wanted to know what had happened with that. They never gave us an explanation, right? After the events, and they get questioned, and there's the press conference, and there's all these other things, right? They never provide the audience an explanation as to what happened. And
I think they do, but it's a one-off line.
Maybe. I didn't gather what it was.
Because he says something about it was a thruster on their ship that had gone off when it shouldn't have, versus they initially thought it was on the ship they were docking with, right? The Apollo.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is what happened.
That is what happened. And
yeah, okay, you're right.
I think it's just a one-off line where it's during the debriefing or whatever, right? And he's like, "This is what happened," and that was it.
And I get you can't. I guess the idea is you don't want to spend too much time in the nitty-gritty of it because the film's already spending a lot of time on the engineering of it all. But for me, I if you're gonna spend the time to at least muddle the film down into that, at least provide a clear explanation. I think you owe that to the audience, because if you're asking them to be invested in the first place, well, then follow through, complete it. At least offer that to them. So I think there was a couple occasions throughout the film where they're struggling through some sort of technical issue, and they don't ever provide a satisfying resolution. Which maybe that's just because of who I am, I want to know these things. But I still feel like in terms of filmmaking, you still want to provide a closure to those little smaller stories.
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. I guess I didn't mind as much, but I did remember thinking like, okay, I guess they aren't going to explain it. And I guess I just kind of like, well, okay, I guess I don't need a specific explanation, but I get some sort of closure would have been nice. I do think that overall, I think they were trying to just like, because there was a lot of scenes where they just cut, like, right, we never see them come back from the moon, or once they fix that part, they cut and he's back on Earth. You know what I mean? Like they cut a lot of that clutter, which I think in that regard is really good.
Okay.
It's smart, right?
Like
it's really smart. Okay, we don't need to see them. We got that he made it out of the crisis, and they're fine.
Sure.
Or we're going to put two together. But I think you're right. In some of those, they kind of maybe lost a little bit of the thread that might have been helpful to kind of connect with the rest of or at least, like you said, kind of pay off for what was going on.
Right. Yeah. I have a couple more thoughts. I was kind of comparing this against his other previous two films, and what's interesting is that this is the most mundane of the three films.
Yeah,
right? It's the most grounded, which is, I'm kind of using that word to be punny, but like I think he intentionally did that to make the film feel not fantastic, right? Like to make it feel real. It was hard. We went to the moon, but it was freaking like tooth and nail, blood and guts or sweat or whatever.
The guts. Oh,
well,
the guts.
I guess
intestines
probably,
on the floor.
that may have been in poor taste. Whereas a film about drumming was freaking like, it was fantastic. It was like insane. It was cerebral. It was psychedelic even, or even La La Land, which, well, it kind of suspended reality quite a few times, right?
Yeah.
But it was just about acting and singing.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. So I felt it was kind of interesting, right? Like how it's so
Yeah,
opposite.
I know. I totally get what you're saying. I think, too, La La Land and this were the same cinematographer. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. And I could kind of see that, too, just because it was more dynamically shot, I feel. Just in terms of like even the stuff, Chris, you were mentioning with the camera outside the window when it was spinning and right, like the thing. But I think one thing that stood out to me is I think with those other films, the characters stood out, right? Like, right, when you think of Whiplash, what stands out in my mind are the characters, right? Specifically, Miles Teller and J. Jonah Jameson. But and same with La La Land to an extent, right? I think that it's the characters that stand out in your mind. Like obviously the music, but the vibrancy of those two characters. Yeah. Like those, like, whereas this, I don't know if I will remember it for the characters.
No, I don't think I will either.
Like
I'll remember
I might remember it for Ryan Gosling, kind of his performance, but not the character, if that makes sense.
No, 100% it does, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that kind of speaks to what you're saying in terms of the differences in the scale and, right? Whereas those films have these crazy characters, bigger than life characters.
Right.
And this one, the characters were just like, yeah, they're just normal people. And that's who went to the moon. Normal people.
Yeah. It's sometimes in situations like this, the expression like stranger than fiction, right? Like reality is strange. I personally disagree with that statement, but and I think to me this is like what is it? This disproves that, right? Where even though this is the most fantastic something that humans have ever done, it was also far less fantastic than fictional stories about mundane things. Does that make sense? It's like the exception that proves the rule. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't get what you're saying, but
dang it. Let's cut that part out. Cut it out.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot. I really like that scene where he abandons his wife at the party and then goes to stand in the dark.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of acting, I felt like that was one of the times that Ryan Gosling did that in the movie.
The times that he acted?
Yeah.
That was a good acting you did there, Ryan Gosling.
But no, like, I mean, yeah. And I don't know. I think the movie, maybe part of the point of the movie is to make people really wonder who Neil Armstrong was in the first place. So maybe, right? Like, maybe
so
get
the point
people
of
to research.
Wait, so the point of the movie was to make them wonder but not answer the question?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, wait, is he still alive?
No, he died in like 2012 or something.
On the moon.
Yeah.
He
never came
Actually,
home.
as I was watching, I was like, I wish more films just like completely things that were, that are historical films, just completely just like
altered history.
Ending. Yeah, just like it comes to mind is
Inglourious Bastards.
Inglourious Bastards, right? Like,
yep.
To me, that ending works so well.
I love
it. Like, what? Like, that would have been great if they just like died on the moon.
Right?
Like, at the end of the
so rad.
No, crazy.
Sean,
can you imagine?
No, here's the alternate ending to the movie. So they're on the moon for whatever 11 minutes, and then Buzz is like, "All right, Neil, come on, it's time to go home." And then Neil's like, "I'm not going home, not really."
And he just stays there. And there's a shot of him like waving his Buzz's
as he flies away.
Part of me,
and just like the audience is like, what? And then you would have a whole bunch of people who thought that would believe
that was reality.
So that would be great. They would be like, yeah, did you know that we left someone on the moon?
Part of me was wondering if we were going to go full 10 Cloverfield Lane and just have it be like this one movie, and then at the very last couple of minutes, like he gets on the moon, and then both him and Buzz get like murdered by like some alien or something.
Well, okay,
it's like an invasion for Earth, and then all of a sudden.
So what's weird is that I think one thing I didn't appreciate about being the first man on the moon is that it's probably super duper scary. The idea that he was standing on that landing pad and wasn't, had to kind of test the surface first. Like, I didn't even think about that. It's like, well, what do you mean? It's just the surface of the moon. Big deal. But then those shots where he's just staring out into the moon's horizon, I'm like, oh crap, is an alien gonna come up? Or like, oh wait, no, there's no aliens on the moon. But you know what I mean? Too. Like, it's that feeling where it's the fear of the unknown. Like it's the last frontier.
Well, even with the quarantine stuff, it's like you got to be in quarantine for 3 weeks. It's like now we look on it and that sounds silly. It's like it's the freaking moon. What are they going? But at the time, it's like, yeah, we don't know. Who knows? What if there's some like? And that'd be horrifying. Just like
it would be. That'd be crazy. They should have also done that when Buzz came back. He got moon sickness, and I don't know. He got psychic powers. I don't know. Who cares? I mean.
Oh, another thing I found really interesting was how he handled the goodbyes with his kids. Like, I'm still dissecting that scene. I guess like that his oldest son just gives him a handshake.
I guess that kind of contributes a little bit to what I'm speaking about too, and that he basically, I guess I don't know, like it seems to put this idea of respect and this idea of like. Professional, spirit of manliness, for lack of a better term, and just like manifest destiny, and this demands respect, not love, right? Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
No, I totally get that, yeah.
And so it's hard to not look at that with a little bit of a depressing eye, like, yeah, okay, yeah, it still sucks. Like, yeah, we went to the moon. I'm not going to pretend like that's not the greatest, amazing, freaking crazy thing we've ever done, but it sucks that we had to. He basically, I mean, the ending shot says it all. He's no longer the same person. He had to basically. He's now in a separate world than his wife, the person he should be closest to. He has had to sever that connection. It's no longer the same relationship.
Yeah, no, for sure. Also, I want to point out that Chris's two favorite scenes were the one where he abandons his wife at the party, and then the scene where he's cold and callous to his children. Just want to point that out.
What are you trying to say?
What are you trying to say?
I'm just... Yeah, what are you trying to say?
I'm just saying it gave Ryan Gosling something to do other than to stare blankly at things.
It's a sign of a good director. Giving your actors something to do.
But I mean, there's got to be like some truth to this, right? Because this was based off of
I am curious, like
a biography, right? This was based off a biography done.
Was it based off of a specific book or just like a collective series?
No, it was based off of an official biography. First Man: The Life of Neil Armstrong.
Okay. Well, what I was curious about too is just any of the historical event, like any of the events, like the Apollo 1 mission or the docking crisis. Like, was there really a crisis?
Yes.
Or did they embellish it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like with any film, you have to embellish, right? Not just embellish, sometimes embellish, but you basically have to adapt, right? Like, life doesn't always fall into a 3-act structure. There's not always rising and falling drama in the way that we expect art to follow. So there's some things that they either cut out or added or changed the timing of, or they changed the scale of, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm curious to know, I guess not curious enough to type it into Google because that's all it takes now. But you know what I mean? Like it's interesting to think of like how they adapted and what they did have to change for dramatic purposes. Something that we think of as like, oh, this is such a grounded reality. It's like, well, maybe, but I don't think we should put too much stock in it being like right now. Perfect reality.
That's true. Wait, what are you Googling?
Gemini 8.
Oh. Was that the one that went wackadoo?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Chris, read us the entire history of it on the podcast.
All right.
Also, that is kind of crazy, too. Like, think about, like, okay, that was a success. Like, think of how you conduct science and just, like, any sort of test run of anything. We, like, as someone who works in just gaming, which is, like, the lowest risk thing you could possibly come up with. But we test things literally thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times before we let anyone even think about getting their hands on it from the public. Right. They threw, like, one spaceship in the sky that did not work. It failed and almost died. Good enough. We're putting it up there. You know what I mean?
But you're not trying to beat Russia to make the next video game, Sean. There's not as much pressure.
That's true. We're trying to beat Poland, though, with CD Projekt Red.
Oh.
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously embellished for cinematic reasons. But yeah, no, that was basically what happened.
There was an engine malfunction, and it caused it to spin.
It was later thought that the damaged wiring caused one of the thrusters become stuck in the on position.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's all they needed to say. I guess they said
it. But in reality, was it just like, oh, this thing's on? Click. That's fixed.
No,
you know what I mean?
It says it happens almost exactly as it was shown in the movie, right? It says that about the time that they were out of contact with ground, the docked spacecraft began to roll. And I can't believe we're doing this in the podcast. I'm just reading off Wikipedia right now. But it began to roll. They undocked. From earlier advice, like I assume it was somebody who was from the ground or mission control was like, hey, if this starts to happen, you should probably try undocking or whatever. But they found that then the roll increased dramatically to the point to where they were turning about once per second, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, it was essentially what happened in the movie.
Yeah, interesting. I guess you passed this time, Damien Chazelle.
Ryan Gosling, Damien Chazelle.
Giselle Bundchen.
I mean, we haven't really talked about Claire Foy and his wife in the movie. So going in, there was a lot of praise behind her character and everything like that in the movie. But I don't know, like I feel like she just appeared in some scenes, like like I didn't.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I know, and she would just appear at like an 11, right? And then it would the scene would then just like end
at an 11.
Yeah, like you remember when she just like goes storming into mission control, is talking to Ron Livingston, and is like, "You're just a bunch of boys," right? And
Ron Livingston's not in this movie.
Wasn't that Ron Livingston?
No.
Who was
the guy from Game Night?
What?
I don't think it's Ron.
No, I know what you're talking about, but it's not Ron Livingston.
No,
it's
Ron Livingston.
Who?
Do you mean John Livingston? Or is it Ron?
This is really important, listeners. All right,
anyway,
bear with us as we figure this out.
Was that not Ron Livingston?
Ron Livingston was not in this movie. Kyle Chandler is who you're thinking of.
Was that Kyle Chandler? Well, then he looks exactly like Ryan Livingston.
Well, anyway. All right.
In any case, what did you mean that she was at 11? She came in at 11.
She came in like
a
hurricane, like she was ramped up and ready to kick butt and take
okay.
names. And then he just says, hey, it's going to be all right. And she's like, all right then, bye.
And
but that goes back to what you were saying a little bit too, or kind of what we're both saying in terms of like sometimes they would cut. Like, what was the point of that scene? I mean, I get the point of the scene, but what was the consequences of that scene? Nothing.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't. I'm not going to fault her acting for that, though.
No. I don't mean as a comment on her acting at all. I just mean in terms of a lot of the character stuff overall, and just how what I meant earlier when I talked about the first two-thirds of the film was just like, all right, because I felt like there was a lot of scenes that really didn't have a lot of consequences or bearing on.
Oh yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I thought we were talking about Claire Foy.
No, sorry, I was tapping into what I was saying earlier. But yeah, in
okay.
general, I agree, Chris. Like, she was just kind of like there. She was good. Moments that she was in, she was good. But she's not. I won't remember this movie for her. Like, whoa, what a character! That character.
Yeah, I mean that's what
Jan Armstrong. You know,
she had some boys that didn't listen to her very often.
Yeah, I always felt like what is going on in that house? Every single scene, they're running around like maniacs. Like, what the? Like, I don't know. That was a weird element to the movie.
I mean, it was interesting too during the scene when she's listening to the radio and they have like the photographers there. Like, I kind of want to look up those photos of like, you know, because I'm sure they're right. They're based on real. Here's historical photos of Jane Armstrong while her husband is spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, I thought they were going to show us some of that kind of junk at the end of the movie, right? Because sometimes these historical movies will do that, and it's kind of fun, like side by sides or whatever. But they didn't give us that, so I haven't.
What happens to them? I need to know what happens.
What did his?
She
son
does
do?
look. They did a good job. I'm looking at her pictures of her now.
Yeah, me too.
They did a good job of making her look like her kind of.
Yeah,
British.
I mean, she didn't look like Claire Foy. They did a good job of making her look not like Claire Foy.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they got
Just
divorced?
Who got divorced? Oh, Jane and Neil?
See?
Man.
That's what I was saying. That's what the ending... See, that's what I'm saying. He had to sacrifice...
Once again, I'm tickled pink that now we're all just on Wikipedia.
I know. This is not our finest moment. We need to do research ahead of time.
It's fun if they follow as we do. We follow along, listeners. You could also Google images of Jane Armstrong.
What did his sons go on to do? That's also...
No, we don't need to get that far down. It's okay.
Long story short, I really liked the movie. It wasn't perfect, but it had a lot of interesting cinematic moments, good camera work, great sound composition and everything. I think this movie is almost a lock for the Sound Awards. I was going to say, do you think it'll be nominated for a fair bit? Like some of the big awards, best I don't know about the big
ones.
I could see like Claire and Ryan getting nominated just because of what the movie is and that whole politics that goes into play. But all in all, I think it winning, it doesn't really stand a chance in that sense. But I think it stands a really good chance of winning the technical awards. Some of the technical awards.
Yeah,
I did find myself, though, a lot of times comparing it to things like Gravity, which I felt was... Maybe it was just because it was more boisterous. I don't know. It did, like, the sound and the awness, just the awesomeness of space and just, like, being out there, I felt was better kind of conveyed from, like, Gravity. But maybe that was kind of the point, that it wasn't about trying to make space flight, like, this epic
romantic
thing.
And
romantic.
glamorous.
It was just, like, showing the reality of it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I guess it could be intentional, but I just mean it didn't really... It didn't feel as, cosmic, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying before, how it feels more grounded. It feels more mundane, even though it's something fantastic. And I completely agree with the comparisons to Gravity. And you feel like you're lost in space, right? You feel like you have that sense of disorientation.
Yeah, and they obviously do things like in Gravity where they, like, play up where things are definitely produced, but they're produced to create an emotional response. And I think it's effective, but like all of the shots of the earth and the moon, and it's just like beautifully lit and perfectly like, right. Whereas in this, they rarely emphasize, there's a couple shots where he kind of looks and there's earth in the background, but they never like, when you think of a movie about space and filmed in space of the moon, you immediately start thinking of like, oh, we're going to have these amazing shots of the earth cresting the horizon over the moon. Like, but they don't do any of that. Right. And I think that, again, I think it's intentional, but it also makes it harder to instill those emotional reactions because
right. You would expect a big swell, right, in the music.
Yeah, exactly.
With
and they don't do that.
shots.
And that's good. I guess I give them credit for the kind of more subtle touches on those things and it not playing to the more obvious kind of heartstrings and our kind of emotional sense of wonder and
I mean, not
adventure,
saying that you guys disagree with this, but I mean, it kind of goes back to like when Ryan was talking about like him standing on the lander for a bit before taking that first step, right?
Yeah.
Like staring, like the end of the day, and they've said this, and once again, I'm not saying you guys disagree with this, but it's about Neil, and it's not, and not saying it's not about getting to the moon, but that's just like the setting, right? Like.
Yeah.
The story is focused on Neil, which is why the swell doesn't happen when he's on the moon, right? The swell happens when he's about to get there, right? It's that last challenge to land on the moon and everything like that. That's where the swell is, right? That dramatic buildup. And I feel like you see that throughout the film overall. It's so much more focused on Neil and his grief than it is on the achievement of going to the moon, which regardless of what people say outside of the movie, I like that it's an interesting take on that, right? Because you don't normally have that. People would let this film be engulfed in the achievement of going to the moon rather than the achievement of the man.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I definitely appreciate that for sure. And those moments are more, I think, in some ways a little bit more authentic, like you were saying, when he's kind of like hesitating to take the first step, and those moments or when they're spinning out of control, they feel more, while they may not be as epic, they feel more real, I suppose. Like I could understand feeling those exact things if I was in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, all in all, like, did you guys feel like you missed him planting the flag on the moon?
It's so un-American. This film is a communist propaganda. Oh my god, it's so stupid. I can't believe
I was surprised that they revealed the whole thing was a big hoax orchestrated by Stanley Kubrick.
All right, that's a wrap, guys. Cut. And then they walk out of the soundstage.
Yeah. Ryan Gosling takes his match off. They're like, Mr. Gosling, can you come over here, please? They said that in the movie.
Ryan Gosling was playing the actor, like he played himself, who was an actor from the 60s, playing Neil Armstrong.
Yeah.
It's funny because all this quote-unquote controversy of the not planting the flag, but there's freaking American freaking flags everywhere. This film is so American.
Yeah.
What psycho idiots can claim this is this is un-American.
What's even funnier
because I didn't see them physically plant up.
Yeah, like the shot afterwards, like
it's in the moon. You see it stand at the moon.
But it's all people that never watched the movie, right? And they're just like they heard about it and they're just like, But no, like once again, even before I saw the movie, it's like it's so clear that the focus isn't on America getting to the moon. The focus this is a character piece. It's about Neil Armstrong. And in that context, I could care less about a flag being planted on the moon.
Sure. Also, looking at pictures of Neil Armstrong, he actually did a good job making him kind of look like him. I guess still looks like Ryan Gosling. But in terms of what their looks are, like, okay,
yeah,
I'd buy it.
I also found that there was a good amount of humor in this movie overall, right? Like intentional, unintentional, blah blah blah, right? But like the bit when he first gets brought onto the project, they all got brought on the project, and they go into the freaking gyro spinner. right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, let's do it again. Let's try it again. And then it cuts to him vomiting all over a bathroom. And he's kind of cleaning up. And then Ed, or whatever his name was, comes in like right after him. And he just like silently points to the stall. And the guy just freaking like, that was humorous. That was fun. Fun little vomit jokes. And like the conference with Buzz Aldrin, the joke, you know, him being like, if there's one thing you could take, Neil, what would it be? He's like, more fuel. Right? Like,
Yeah, but the reason that was funny because it wasn't funny. Like everyone,
I know, but it's intentional, right?
Oh, so
Yeah, I know.
I actually, the humor may be slightly off for me. I watched this movie entirely alone. So I had, what was that funny in your audience?
I mean, it was funny to me.
There was one thing that everyone
My
laughed
audience
at.
wasn't approving.
Oh, the one thing that was fun. I think there was a couple chuckles here and there, but for the most part, the only thing that really got a laugh was when he's saying bye to his kids, or when his wife is like, you know, your dad's gonna go away, and his son's like, he's going to the moon. Okay, can I go outside and play? Or I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I
remember
laughed
the line was.
so hard at that part. I've taken
Yeah.
a while to remember that, but I was laughing so hard.
I can't remember the way the line and the way it was delivered. But that was the funniest moment for me, and the biggest laugh in my audience. It was I can't remember what the line was, but yeah, it was just pretty funny.
Man, it's just,
Anyways.
that reminds me also, just like before he sits down with his kids, how he was just trying his hardest to avoid that conversation because he just was not invested anymore on that level, right? Like, man, that was good. That was good. I kind of hope that is what Neil was like.
Okay, sure.
All right. So, any closing comments?
First Man was a movie about man. He was the first one of them.
That was Adam.
That was Adam. It was the moon's Adam. It was about Moon Adam.
Moon aliens, moonworms.
I did like it. I just didn't. I think we've all said it. We didn't love it. I don't know if I'd watch it again. Like, I'm glad I saw it, but I guess there's nothing that really makes me want to go back and revisit it, I suppose. It was, I would give it a 7 out of thumbs.
So you really loved it.
Yes.
No, I pretty much agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good.
All right. So, what are we talking about next? Maybe,